We are just days away from Taiwan's presidential election, which will be one of the most important geopolitical events of 2024. Whoever is elected Taiwan's next leader will not only control the future of the island, but also much more.
The question of Taiwan is ultimately a question of US-China relations.
This is George Yu, the former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Singapore. He is one of the world's leading actual experts on China and served in the Singaporean military for over 10 years, attaining the rank of Brigadier General. It was literally Mr. Yu's job to understand war, military strategy, and all the paths a hot war in the region could take them. In a recent speech at the Asia-Pacific Forward Forum, Mr. Yu revealed the stunning truth about Taiwan's future with China. And most importantly, he did it in front of an audience of senior Taiwanese officials. Western mainstream media has continuously told us that Xi Jinping can't wait to invade Taiwan and establish his legacy as the Chinese leader who successfully reunified mainland China with Taiwan. But does China have the military capabilities to do so? On the flip side, does the United States have the military capacity to counter such an attack? Western media wants you to believe that Taiwan's days as a democratic society will soon be over. But what if there's a solution that both China and Taiwan can agree to that will benefit both sides and bring peace and stability to the region? I know, it sounds too good to be true, but in today's video, I'm going to break down George Yu's recent speech and explain everything you need to know about Taiwan from a true expert. Make sure you watch to the end where I reveal Mr. Yu's groundbreaking solution for China and Taiwan. Trust me, you've never heard this idea anywhere in mainstream media, but Mr. Yu's Taiwan analysis is simply brilliant and crucial for anyone who wants to understand the truth about the future of China and Taiwan. Let's jump in. There are two main takeaways from Mr. Yu's speech I want to share with you today. The first is that the US government knows it likely cannot win a conventional war with China, and the second is that maintaining the status quo is merely a temporary solution. In fact, Mr. Yu himself calls the status quo a ticking time bomb. Let's break that down. Over the past decade, China's military continues to expand and become more powerful. This is expected because building a robust military program is what all superpowers do. But can the United States government keep up? But just last week, the Pentagon's press secretary said the hard truth about the future of Ukraine funding last week to Congress. We're all out of money. With no end in sight for the war in Gaza, the US military is stretched too thin, and many US officials now realized a very important truth.
I think the US have come to the conclusion that if it's a conventional war, there is no certainty of winning. In fact, there's a good chance that they may lose.
The US would most likely lose a head-to-head war with China. Therefore, the only option left is to deter China with the threat of nuclear warfare, while at the same time denying China a counterstrike capability. Mr. Yu believes that China will undoubtedly obtain this counterstrike capability within the next 10 years. And when they do so, it's basically over. The US would lose a conventional war and couldn't credibly threaten China with nuclear warfare because they themselves would get hit in a counterstrike. But this is where things get interesting, because with both sides building up their nuclear arsenals, the war would shift to an entirely different battleground.
So they know they need submarines. And the only sea which is deep enough is the South China Sea.
Now you understand why the South China Sea has become so important to China in recent years. In the event of a US-China conflict, the ocean would become the primary battlefield, and advanced submarines would become one of the most important strategic assets. On the flip side, we can now understand why the United States has formed a strategic alliance with the UK and Australia to build AUKUS, a $368 billion program to build a fleet of nuclear-powered submarines that could track and hunt down Chinese submarines in the South China Sea. But this is something that China also knows and is actively preparing for. Just last week, the SCMP broke a story that Chinese scientists developed the most sensitive and advanced submarine detection system in the world. The development could alter the strategic landscape, taking the exorbitant technology out of the hands of a select few military powers. The stage is being set for a grand war between superpowers, with both the US and China strategically working hard to protect their national interests. Of course, this leaves Taiwan in a vulnerable position.
Now, if I were Taiwanese, think about this. In 10 years' time, China will have almost a certain counter-strike capability against the US. So at a conventional level, they may not prevail. At the nuclear level, the risks are too high. At that point, the pressure on Taiwan, political, military, economic pressure, is bound to grow. So therefore, the status quo is a ticking bomb. To say, keep the status quo, is to say, let it tick. It will not tick forever. In 10 years' time, you'll be ticking much faster.
And because it will be ticking much faster, it's in Taiwan's best interest to negotiate now rather than later, which is exactly what some of the world's best political leaders have been saying for decades. Just listen to the insights of Singapore's founding father, the great Lee Kuan Yew, who in my opinion is one of the most extraordinary leaders of the last century. Lee Kuan Yew helped transform Singapore from a poor, highly illiterate island nation with no natural resources into one of the world's most prosperous nations. Here is his thoughts on Taiwan.
Lee Kuan Yew had always taken the position that it is better for Taiwan to negotiate with the mainland earlier rather than later. Because the longer you wait, the weaker your relative negotiating position.
But some Taiwanese think patiently waiting it out is the best strategy. Their belief is that sooner or later, something will happen to the mainland. For example, a power struggle within the Chinese government, maybe a collapse of the party, or even a collapse of China's economy. When any of these scenarios happen, it will be Taiwan's chance to escape and become independent. But once again, Mr. Yew points out why this isn't a wise strategy.
But you cannot base policy on such a possibility. It's too dangerous. It may happen, but it's not a high chance. And policy cannot be based on that.
And this is where Mr. Yew proposes a groundbreaking solution that will absolutely blow your mind. Instead of maintaining the status quo or China absorbing Taiwan, Mr. Yew proposes a Chinese Commonwealth. Basically, instead of one country, two systems like Hong Kong, it would be something more like two countries, two systems united under a common roof.
Maybe it is possible for the two sides to agree to some kind of a Chinese Commonwealth. So when we talk about one China, maybe we can talk about a one China Commonwealth, where the two sides talk about trade, cooperation, problems, agree on certain principles, without the need for a common executive.
And here is the brilliance of this solution. There would be no need for a common executive or any executive at all. Both sides could meet under one common roof, discuss important issues like trade and policies, and then afterwards go back to each respective territory. This would prevent China from taking over Taiwan, and Taiwan would maintain its links with the US, but not to an extent that threatens the People's Republic of China. Has there ever been anything like this before in world history? Once again, Mr. Yew gives us some concrete examples of how this could actually work.
There are precedents. In Iceland, the Icelandic people met every year in the Rift Valley. They make laws. They talk about trade disputes. They pass judgments. They punish. Then they went back to their separate valleys. There was no executive, no common executive. Then if you study Switzerland, the cantons came together to form the Helvetian Confederation. Again, they had no executive, but they met to discuss common problems.
Overall, this groundbreaking new proposal is extremely smart because it would be a win-win situation for everyone. It'd be a win for Taiwan and the ROC because they'd continue to have their own identity and would have even more independence than they do now. It would also improve Taiwan's relationship with China because their relationship would be more formalized, and a lot less uncertainties, fears, and tensions would thus be removed. It would also be a win for China's government because they would be reunited with Taiwan under one roof, thus completing the Chinese goal of successfully reunifying Taiwan with the mainland. But of course, still allowing Taiwan to maintain a high level of independence. Once again, the key thought here is two countries, two systems united under a common roof. This is a fascinating proposal that hasn't really been talked about yet. Of course, many in the West will be skeptical and immediately say that China's government would never agree to such an idea. But once again, listen to Mr. Yew reveal a fascinating insight into China's relationship with another important territory, and how history shows us that China's government can be open to creative solutions.
Can the mainland accept that? I think they can. If you look at Macau, in the 19th century, when China was being ravaged by the imperial powers, Portugal decided to take Macau. But they had a revolution in 1973, and they said, we want to return Macau immediately to China. What did China say? China said, no, we have to settle Hong Kong first. Please stay, please stay. So it was only in 1999 that Macau returned to the mainland. And even to today, there is no practical change in how Macau is run or the Macanese way of life.
Mr. Yew just illustrated how China has absolutely no problem with these types of arrangements, as soon as the entity in question is essentially being a good neighbor. But can Taiwan accept this? According to Mr. Yew, the currently elected party and frontrunner for the 2024 Taiwan election, the DPP, is the main obstacle. Mr. Yew illustrates why by sharing his insight from a phone call with Taiwan's current president Tsai Ing-wen right before she was sworn into office.
She said that China did not have a positive attitude. I told her, I said, in Singapore, Xi Jinping had opened the road for you. She did not respond to me, but she knew what I meant. But I knew that she could not take that road, because that road requires her to accept a one China consensus. And she could not take it. In the DPP constitution, it says our goal is an independent republic of Taiwan, even though both Chen Shui-bian and Tsai Ing-wen swore on the 民国宪法 of one China.
The most interesting point in this clip was the comment that in Singapore, Xi Jinping opened the road for you. What does that exactly mean? Mr. Yu was referring to the 2015 meeting between Chinese President Xi Jinping and then Taiwanese President Ma Ying-jeou. It was a historic, landmark summit, the first meeting between the leaders of China and Taiwan since Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong met in 1945. The 2015 meeting was in fact a very warm meeting between Xi and Ma, with both sides pledging to continue upholding the One China policy, lower cross-strait hostility, and expand exchanges. This is what Mr. Yu means when he said Xi opened the road for you, that Xi would be very willing to be flexible and accept some kind of solution resembling the proposed Chinese Commonwealth. However, as he points out, Taiwan's current president cannot take this road because her party's constitution forbids it. Of course, let's be fair and point out that many Taiwanese think such a Commonwealth solution could be a trap. In other words, under one common roof will mean under one PRC roof. However, Mr. Yu explains that although this road is imperfect, nothing in geopolitics ever is, and learning to take this road just might be the most important decision Taiwan makes, not only for itself, but for the future of the entire world.
This road is not a superhighway, but it's not a bad road. And one China, the PRC did not say one PRC policy, it says one China. It did not say when. It says 什么都可以谈. You can discuss everything. The alternative is a dead end and tragedy. Not just for Taiwan and the mainland, but I think for Singapore and for the entire region, for the world, if there's war between China and the US.
In conclusion, Mr. Yu has proposed a groundbreaking solution here for China-Taiwan relations moving forward. From my perspective, I think this is the most brilliant analysis of China-Taiwan relations that I've ever heard, and I applaud Mr. Yu for thinking outside of the box for a solution to this very complex problem. But now the real question for Taiwan's future lies in the hands of its voters. The frontrunner in this election is DPP candidate and current Vice President William Lai. However, he only has about 30% support among voters, mainly his party's longtime supporters, according to opinion polls. Using the same strategy that helped current President Tsai Ing-wen win her election, William Lai's entire campaign is focused on raising fears of a takeover by Beijing. But it's not clear if using the same strategy will help Lai win this time. He has faced difficulties winning over middle-of-the-road voters, partially because of fears the DPP's confrontation with Beijing could lead Taiwan towards a war with China. If there is one takeaway I want you to remember from today's video, it's that the status quo is a ticking time bomb. If not addressed now, it will only tick louder and faster in coming years. I hope the Taiwanese people understand this and vote for the best leader to put them in a position to succeed, because a peaceful Taiwan Strait is not only important for Taiwan and China, but once again for the entire world. Everyone, I want to thank you for making it to this point in the video, and now it's time to let me know what you think of Mr. Yu's groundbreaking proposal, and most importantly, who do you think should prevail as Taiwan's next leader? Let me know down in the comments below. And most importantly, thank you so much for spending time with me here today on YouTube. And I look forward to seeing you all in our next video soon.